to where we've still got about 10 minutes, and we, brings us to the heart of what we wanted to talk about, and that was really spirituality and our place in the world and in the cosmos, and how that's addressed in the movie that's recently out, The Life of Pi. Life of Pi is based upon a novel by Jan Martel of the same title, Life of Pi, and it's the story of a young Indian boy that is first a Hindu, and then he becomes, in addition, a Christian, and then in addition, a Muslim, because he's looking to understand God and His place and how this all works and what it all means. And in doing that, he then, his family then leaves India, and there's a shipwreck, and he ends up being lost at sea and survives. And it's the story of that, and he shared this vessel with God and a tiger, and it was the cinematography was really pretty fantastic. It was 3D. Tell us a little bit about the shooting of the film and what they've done and how that worked.
All right. Not to spend too long on this, but yeah, I mean, generally 3D is something that I think a lot of people maybe, in fact, don't enjoy, especially older people. It will give you a headache or something like that. And the technology used in the film is not the same 3D that you would be familiar with. Starting with James Cameron's Avatar, they have new cameras, a new technology and it doesn't really necessarily make things pop out at you. It just adds more depth to the image in such a way that after maybe 10-15 minutes, you forget that the film is in 3D. You just become engrossed and immersed in it. Nothing's really popping out at you. It's just you're in that world. And so it's really the preferred way to see this film, and it becomes, the 3D technological aspect becomes a narrative device. It becomes, just like sound or color or something like that, and not a gimmick.
It's because of the great ocean views and the water,
yeah,
and it's
the story lends itself to this kind of technology.
Yeah. Well, here's from chapter 74 in Life of Pi. He's out here on a boat. He's on his own with only this tiger whose name is Richard Parker, and that's a clerical error, was how the tiger got named, but that's another story. I practiced religious rituals, and I adapted to the circumstances. Solitary masses without priests or consecrated communion hosts, dashans without murtis, and pujas with turtle meat for prasad, acts of devotion to Allah, not knowing where Mecca was and getting my Arabic wrong. They brought me comfort, that is certain. But it was hard. Oh, it was hard. Faith in God is an opening up, a letting go, a deep trust, a free act of love. But sometimes it was so hard to love. Sometimes my heart was sinking so fast with anger, desolation, weariness. I was afraid it would sink to the very bottom of the Pacific and I would not be able to lift it back up. At such moments I tried to elevate myself. I would touch the turban I had made with the remnants of my shirt, and I would say aloud, "This is God's hat." And I would pat my pants and say aloud, "This is God's attire." And I would point to Richard Parker and say aloud, "This is God's cat." And I would point to the lifeboat and say aloud, "This is God's ark." And I would spread my hands wide and say aloud, "These are God's wide acres." And I would point to the sky and say aloud, "This is God's ear." And in this way, I would remind myself of creation and my place in it. But God's hat was always unraveling. God's pants were falling apart. God's cat was a constant danger. God's ark was a jail. God's wide acres were slowly killing me. God's ear didn't seem to be listening. Despair was a heavy blackness that let no light in or out. It was a hell beyond expression. I thank God it always passed. A school of fish appeared around the net, or a knot cried out to be reknotted, or I thought of my family and how they were spared this terrible agony. The blackness would stir and eventually go away, and God would remain, a shining point of light in my heart, I would go on loving.
I think what's special about this and what the character of Pi is doing in this extraordinary situation is throughout his whole life, he's trying to find and understand God, without boundaries. And he's doing this through various religion. And it points to the fact that, God is such an ineffable concept that we need religion and these edifices of religion and tradition and practice to help us understand what that is and interpret what that is. And what Pi is trying to do is something that the world doesn't really tolerate, is he's trying to break all those down and get as close of an understanding of God, of that spiritual entity, as he can. This movie paints a really beautiful portrait of one person, one human being's quest to do that. And, it's something that really touched me, and because it's scary to break apart those edifices. And, as human beings, we need that kind of structure in order to understand such complex things. And, he dove off, into the deep end of religious idea and spirituality, trying to, come closer. So
all these animals in the zoo, they seem to have needed structure also, and that when they lacked structure,
right.
that was chaos for them and something that they didn't accept well. It seems that all animals want some kind of structure to be comfortable in, some anchor to have.
Including human beings. We're building the zoo, not to emphasize that too much, but we talk about law and society. That is just another edifice, another structure, and but if we want to get to ultimate transcendental truth, sometimes we need to break that down, and the film shows that process. As he's cast out into the ocean, into the middle of nowhere, and also into the ocean of his own mind and his own heart, and as we begin to not only deconstruct this notion of God, but this notion of reality. And towards the end of the film, we question what he really experiences.
Right. That's a key part in this is the story of existence has those things that fit within the constructs of all of those facilities that we have, but maybe and we don't deal well with the unexplainable part, the part that is without the boundaries, and so the book leaves us with that, as the movie does, with us getting to choose which story we prefer.
Yeah. What I loved about the film, though, was that it was so optimistic, because usually stories that try to deconstruct these things, they I remember reminded of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and that has a darker turn. It's about the how sometimes the darkness within us prevails over what Lincoln called the better angels of our nature. And this film isn't that. It's about really truly finding God, and finding the best within us, the humaneness within us, and coming out of extraordinary situations. So it's a great film. I hope everyone goes and sees it and reads the book.
Yeah, we've got a caller. Let's try a caller. You're on the air. Good morning.